I am a big fan of learning things in other industries and then bringing that back to social media. Like, did you know chicken poop is really great fertilizer? Who knew? If you have a farm or you're homesteading, you can actually have your chickens walk around the farm. They will poop, it'll make the soil better. And you're probably wondering, what the heck does this have to do with social media? I'm getting there, I promise. Be sure to stick around. Here's another fun one. If you have birds, right? If you have chickens or you have ducks, having a goose can act like a guard dog for all of your other birds. I don't know why geese live by the sword, but they do. And these are little things you learn from being on a farm, from working on a farm. Fun fact, I worked on a flower farm in college in Virginia. No, I did not go to school in Virginia. No, I did not study agriculture. I was just interested in flower farming and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to go try it for 3 months? So I did. And that explains much of my life throughout my 20s and honestly how I got started with social media and in travel. I've always just followed my curiosity. I'm sure you already know that if you've been here a while, but I think that being curious is something that you're going to find that flows in common through all of these threads, whether you're into gardening, farming, or you're like, Brittany, just tell me what to do so I can get my posting. Curiosity is what is required. So that is the short mini lesson. But in this episode, I'm going to dive more deeply into what we can learn from farmers and foresters when it comes to marketing and content creation. Stick around. The first thing we need to know about farming as it relates to marketing and content creation is that there is a rhythm to the seasons. You can come to expect generally, and now I'm being specific to the Northern Hemisphere here, so I apologize if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. For my Australian, New Zealander, South African friends, for friends across the globe, I apologize. I'm in the desert, so even me, I don't get all of these same seasons, but you get the idea. So when we're thinking about working with the seasons, you generally have fall, winter, spring, and summer. In a practical sense, fall is when it's starting to get chillier. If you live in a place with those beautiful deciduous trees, you get the reds, the yellows, the orange. October is this beautiful thing that you can come to expect and be excited for because every single fall you're going to get the cozy vibes. For me, it means rewatching Gilmore Girls. Eventually, I will do a group trip up there to the place that inspired Stars Hollow. So if you're into that, let me know because I think it'd be so fun to do a little cellar retreat out there. Anyway, you have certain things that you do and expect during fall, like maybe that's hay rides where you are, maybe that's apple cider donuts. And from a farming perspective, fall is a big time for harvest. When we think about this in the business sense, there are certain times in our business where we're maybe not actively working on it as much, but we're enjoying the fruits of our labor. We're actually seeing everything come to fruition, which is such a great feeling. But you also know right around the corner, there's going to be a time for rest. So you might have this feast or famine way in your business where, especially if it's seasonal, there are certain months where you just make more. So if we look on the calendar, for a lot of us, that's back to school, right? And then depending on your niche or what you focus on, maybe there's another time of the year that does really well for you. But for sellers, that back to school season during the late summer, early fall is critical for us. So you enjoy the fruits of your labors from all of the months and years before, but you know winter's around the corner. You're starting to wind down. You're not having any big projects right now. You're not really creating anything new. You're just enjoying and maybe even pruning, right? You're maybe even looking for certain things that you don't want to do anymore. Maybe you have a growing bundle and you're just going to give up on it, like whatever that looks like for you. But it's the same thing for content. You have an idea of what works. And the reason I wanted to start with fall, even though fall is technically one of the last seasons of the year, depending on how you look at your calendar, because that's what we're really working towards. We're working towards fall. The next season, or you could say the first season of the year, is winter. Winter is still, it's quiet. There isn't a lot that's coming to life or being produced at this time. Things are slowing down. And this can be a beautiful time for rest, reflection, for preparation. Now, on the flower farm, I think that it's easy to get this vision of I was just frolicking on flowers. I would have loved to have done that, but I actually went during the midwinter and then left in the spring. So I left just when it was starting to come back to life. And also the funny thing about being on a flower farm, by the way, is you don't get to see all the flowers. You harvest the flowers. So the people at the farmer's market get to see the flowers when they're buying the single stems and bouquets, but you don't really get to see them on the farm itself, or at least not for very long, and especially not during winter. So for almost all of winter, I was in the greenhouse. I was propagating plants. I was trimming things, which is all very important and good and necessary, right? Like it's all work that needs to happen, but it's not the same kind of work that you have during the summer, during the fall. And in our businesses and with our marketing, there's a time to step back and look at everything systematically and intentionally and think what's working, what's not, what do I like, what do I not like, what do I want to keep doing, what do I want to stop doing? And that does require taking a step back from doing and actually looking at everything. Then there's spring. Spring is when we get a pep in our step. The temperature's going up a little bit. We're getting excited. We're looking forward to summer. We're getting a little more energy. We're feeling a little more creative. We have some projects starting. Maybe we're starting to get momentum. If you think about this on social media, this is when maybe it feels like you've just been slogging and posting for so long. Nobody's been responding. Nobody's been liking. And then all of a sudden you have a post go viral and you're like, we're in business, baby. People are seeing it. It's getting viewed by thousands or hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands, millions maybe. And you're like, yes, this is my shot. That is that spring feeling. I feel like you literally get a spring in your step. Now that doesn't mean that you're done, right? You have one post go viral. Yay. Like, of course not. But that is also another plug to have evergreen content, right? Because if you have the same well-performing post going over and over again, you get to a point where virality and high reach just becomes a norm for you. And then you also get to treat your nervous system better because you're not having that dysregulation of being up, down all the time, which is priceless. Then you have summer, which is so exciting if you live in a place that's not hot. For me, it's literally the opposite. My desert is my winter. I am inside all the time during summer in the desert because it's so miserably hot, like 108 degrees. There's just no way to make that comfortable outside. For those of you who are in UK, in Europe, Australia, that's like 38 to 40 C. It's just unbearable. You can't be outside. So during the summer, I'm either not here in the desert or I'm inside in the air conditioning. That's just how it is. Just like how if you live somewhere up north or you live in somewhere that's really cold, that has really cold winters, then you're inside during winter, right? And summer is the exciting time. But when we think about the idea of summer, even just as a teacher or a former teacher, that's when you're not in school. That's when teachers have more time off. Now teachers who are also moms get a bit of a shift because now their kids are off of school. They're spending time with their kids. They're finding things for them to do. So it's a little bit different, but you have different things that come with every single season. Like even if I just list these different activities, you can kind of figure out which seasonal bucket it falls into. So let's just do that together. Prep, pruning, planting, waiting, watering, harvesting. You can kind of see, even just from each of those words, it kind of has a seasonal connotation to it. And it's the same thing in our businesses. We have naturally seasonal businesses as TPT sellers, but it's the same thing in travel, by the way. Travel is very highly seasonal, especially for focusing on one specific niche destination. So I get it. And that is why we want to plant our forest, right? We want to have that evergreen content that is always ever relevant, whether they're watching in winter, spring, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and so on. So the reflection question for that is, are you aware of the season your business is in and of the season you're in? Maybe you're in a personal winter and you have to respect that. And I also know this sounds a little bit esoteric, which is honestly me anyway, but I do think it's good to think about. I talk a lot about seasonality in business and in life because I just don't think it's fair or reasonable to try to copy someone else's model. Honestly, don't copy somebody else anyway because we're all so different. But when you're looking at someone's model or advice, you do have to consider the season they're in, right? Not everything I say works for every single person. Like I acknowledge that. Nobody can say everything they say works for everybody. Now, there are certain best practices per platform, per income stream. Of course, there are certain best practices on Instagram. What works for one seller could work for another if they're just looking at like a views perspective. But if one person has 3 kids under 5 and they have a full-time job and their TPT business is being done in 2 to 5 hours a week versus a seller who is 21, has no spouse, has no kids, and is at home full-time, like they're going to have completely different seasons of life and capacities. Now, it doesn't mean that the 21-year-old doesn't have some other kind of challenge to overcome. Like, of course, we all do. But it just makes sense that if you have 3 kids under 5, you're probably going to have a harder time listening to the younger person who doesn't have those responsibilities because they don't understand your challenges yet. Just like how the person who's 21, maybe that person wants to travel and have this digital nomad lifestyle. They're not going to listen to someone who's living in the suburbs with 3 kids under 5. There's nothing wrong with it. You just have to consider it, who you're listening to, who you're learning from, and then also the specific strategy. So for example, I follow this girl, Mackenzie Heflin. She was actually one of my first coaches when I first started. I think I worked with her 2019, 2020. She is just such a brilliant copywriter and content creator. I just joined her membership actually because I was like, oh, I haven't heard from you in a while and your stuff's so good. She has certain services and products that she has now that she didn't have when she first had her first baby because she just didn't have the same capacity. So I do think you have to respect the season you're in. I would say especially if you're a woman, we just have unique different challenges that men don't have. We even have a seasonal kind of cycle every month if you think about it. We have 4 phases. Then we have forestry. We learn the power of patience and systems. I've mentioned it already that we want to have a forest of content. We want to have evergreen blog posts, podcast episodes, YouTube videos, even social media posts that could stand the test of time, or technically even social media posts that are evergreen in the sense that you have a turkey activity for Thanksgiving, you're posting it now in the future, next year, 2 years, 3 years later, it's the same resource, it's the same visuals. You will just use a certain tool and method and have it repost again. Like, why wouldn't you do that? You don't have to think of a new Thanksgiving post every year, and you don't have to hire a VA to schedule a new post. You can just pay a tool for that. You're designing for sustainability and not speed. If you think about a garden or a farm, it's for food, it's for sustenance, and we need that immediately, every day, constantly, consistently, right? Like, I mean, unless you're fasting, but even if you're fasting, like, you're gonna feel it. But with a forest, you're thinking long-term, legacy, forever, okay? It's a very different way of thinking. Every single piece of long-form content or evergreen social media posts that you create and schedule is like planting a tree. And the more trees you have, the more the trees will protect and support each other. And when you have a whole bunch planted, which will take some time at first, you'll be able to leverage that. You'll often hear in the teacher space about passive income, and I have so many feelings about that, and I will not get into that rant today. But I will just say, I don't believe in passive income because there's always an exchange of work for money. Every single time, hours for dollars, you'll never escape that. It's how do you get the most leverage and the most output with the least amount of input. So what I mean by that is, if I spend 1 hour today, how can I make sure I make $100 from that 1 hour of work versus $10? I'm going to spend an hour of time anyway. How can I make sure I spend less time overtime? Like, I don't have to repeat that same hour. And that's one of the reasons I got into evergreen content, because I was creating content for this one client in particular. And I'm like, wait a minute, the same post performed well last year and the year before that. I'm just going to set this thing up so it completely goes. For a while, I was like, should I even talk about that? Am I going to work myself out of a job? But the thing I realized is so many sellers, especially now with all the weird things that Teachers Pay Teachers has endured and the things that they've changed, most sellers will never be able to or never want to pay a social media manager. I totally understand that. I realize that. But you could all share me as a social media manager, which is kind of funny to say, but like, if I have multiple people, I can talk to all of you at one time and I can teach all of you this certain technique, or we can all create posts together and help you plant that forest. And that's what we're going to be doing in the Evergreen content engine. I can't wait to talk more about it. It is going to be opening up around Earth Day, so look out for that. And the goal, what does this look like? When we shift from a gardening mindset to a forest mindset, when we shift from thinking short-term to long-term, creating systems and having a vision, it looks like instead of being burnt out and hating social media, actually going on there to enjoy it and relax, because you're not stressed out and feeling that shame cycle. I know I've been in it. You probably don't even recognize it at first because you're just like, oh, I just feel so stressed by social media. I feel overwhelmed. Why? Why do you feel that way? I've been asking myself that a lot lately. And it's not social media. Social media is neutral. Facebook is neutral. TikTok is neutral. Instagram is neutral. They have meaning that we assign to them, right? So where is that meaning coming from? It's from an experience that you had, or at least a perceived feeling about an experience that you had. And so if you have perceived that your experience on those platforms has been negative, or if you're taking certain actions or engaging in certain platforms that bring you more negative emotions, which is kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which happens because of algorithms, then it's understandable why you wouldn't like it. And honestly, I don't think it's healthy for all of us to live on social media anyway. I know that. So my goal, my hope, is to help you develop a content system that works for you on autopilot. I can't wait to talk to you about more about that. I can't wait to work with some of you. It's going to be great. So instead of chasing trends, we're planting deep roots, we're building systems, and we're publishing for longevity. Some questions to ask yourself. Which crop am I focusing on? Now, if you have to feed yourself, if you're like, I make money when I post on social media, then keep posting, right? Like, if you are doing really well on TikTok or Instagram or your Facebook group, and every time you post, you make money, keep doing that. Now, eventually, I would love it if you didn't have to keep spending that much time and you would actually get to a point where you don't have to do that. Same for email, by the way. I am super excited for the email section of this because I know a lot of you know me for social media, but it all works together. That's why, by the way, I call this the Social Media Magic podcast and not the Instagram or Facebook magic. Honestly, I should have called it marketing magic because I cover so many other topics, but it all works together. Your long form content, your email marketing, your short form content, social media, what you're doing on the actual marketplace, if you're on TPT, Etsy, or your website, it all works together. It doesn't work in isolation. So which crop are you focusing on right now? Are you working on your audience, your offers, your visibility? Which season are you in? And which cycle are you in as far as your actual business? Are you harvesting, planting, watering? You don't know. It's okay if you don't. I don't want you to create just for creation's sake. I want you to be a steward of your message and your mission. I want you to know what those are, and I want you to guard those very carefully, and I want them to manifest in really impactful, compelling content. I want for you to post for profit and with purpose, and that is my goal for you. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Social Media Magic Podcast. Again, my name is Brittany Verlenich. I'm a content strategist, social media manager, total marketing nerd, and obviously the host of the show. And if you want to work with me, you can hire me for a one-off project on Fiverr. I'll be sure to put that link down in the episode description or in the video description. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and like this video. It will help YouTube to know to send you more content about content creation, marketing strategically and intentionally. And it shows YouTube that, okay, this girl is making some good stuff. So we'll show her videos out, and that really helps a lot. And if you want to make sure you don't miss anything, hit that little bell so you never miss notifications of when a new video is posted. If you are listening on an audio-only platform, could you do me a favor and leave a review? I would love to see more reviews of the show, especially on Apple Podcasts, where you can leave a full review, and on Spotify, leaving 5 stars. That would mean the world to me. Thank you so much in advance. And of course, if you have any questions, drop them below in the comments, or if you'd rather message me personally, you can send me a DM on Instagram over at Brittany Merlinich. You'll see me soon.